Welcome back to Midday. It's 11:15, and we're looking back at what was making headlines 10, 20, even 40 years ago. Remembering the passing of a local restaurant legend, better times for the Bills and their fans, and perhaps the biggest food item ever created in Buffalo. Those stories and more made headlines this very week and decades past. Channel 2's Dave McKinley looks back to when it was all news to you.
10 years ago this week was when the NFTA adopted a new rule banning vaping on Metro buses. At that time, Chris Manhertz was starring on the hard court as a forward for Canisius College basketball. This week's News to You pop quiz: what professional team does Manhertz play for today? And here's a hint. It's kind of a trick question. Governor Andrew Cuomo, who often claimed to be a governor for all New Yorkers, made his infamous remark about how there was no place for conservatives in this state, raising the ire of, among others, Buffalo's Catholic Bishop Richard Malone.
Now, he is speaking of extremism, and I think that comment is the best example of extremism I've heard for a long time.
And that same week, Cuomo introduced what was then a record state budget of $137 billion. 10 years later, the one just introduced by his successor, Kathy Hochul, came in at $233 billion, reflecting a nearly 60% increase in state spending in just the last decade since this week in 2014. 20 years ago this week.
From Atkins to South Beach, it's a diet revolution.
Watching the carbs.
Hundreds of new low-carb foods have been introduced. The carb-counting craze has changed the way Americans eat. Burger King is offering Whopper hamburgers minus the bread.
3 grams of carbs.
Marketers who studied diet trends say they haven't seen anything like this one in decades.
Former Buffalo radio personality Jack Parr, who went on to host The Tonight Show, died at the age of 85. We also lost Bob Keeshan, who was Buffalo Bob Smith's sidekick Clarabelle the Clown, before becoming known to generations of children as Captain Kangaroo. And came the sudden passing at just age 52 of beloved Buffalo restaurateur Andy DiVincenzo, renowned for his stuffed peppers, and that big black board at Billy Ogden's would never seem the same after this week in 2004. 30 years ago this week. Those two words became the clarion call for Bills backers after their team won another AFC championship and earned their 4th straight berth in the Super Bowl.
The people that didn't want us there, sorry.
The two words, "we're back," were then punctuated by 4 more, and even the normally reserved Congressman John LaFalce couldn't contain himself.
We're back. Deal with it, America.
And they say this will be the year of the Buffalo.
Yeah, well, come on back next week and we'll go over how that went. 40 years ago this week, in the days of Shelley brand meat products, really grand meat products, they needed plenty of it when, to celebrate National Meat Week, a 300-foot-long submarine sandwich was constructed inside the NFTA Metro Rail barn, a place big enough to accommodate its 300-foot length, after which it was donated to the city mission and consumed by its residents, and where a grateful director quoted the Bible as saying,
"A man shall not live by bread alone."
A saying perhaps as true today as it was in the days when this was all news to you.
Thank you, Dave. So here's the answer to this week's News to You pop quiz. We asked you if you knew which professional team former Canisius basketball star Chris Manhertz currently plays for. We also advised that it was somewhat of a trick question, and that's because Manhertz, though he had never played football, decided after college to take a shot at the NFL. So he got signed as a free agent by the Bills, didn't make the cut, but he eventually caught on, and now he's a tight end with the Denver Broncos.
No kidding. Interesting.
Yeah, so there you go.
That's a good story.
That was a good trivia question this week, Dave.
With 2 minutes left, it wasn't a good story last night.
No, it wasn't.
I thought at the 2-minute warning, we had them.
Yeah, I think that's what everybody thought. Yep.
Okay.
Find your zen.